if that works.
Yeah.
So, welcome back to the Young Entrepreneurs Podcast. I'm your host, Spencer McPartland, and today I'm joined by, I would call a special guest, but also a friend who, he came and spoke with our school, I would say at a 7x7 event, which is pretty much seven founders, as it kind of entails the title, but they speak for, I believe it was either a minute or 7 minutes about what they did and their impact. And so, um, yeah. And so, this is episode number 28. And so, without further ado, my guest is Chris Rudder, who, if you do not know who he is, um, he's you could say the co-founder, but the reviver of Spikeball, from taking it from the original founder who, um, originally created it but revived it and brought it to national attention, bringing it on Shark Tank and how I built this and like bringing it a lot more traction and visibility than it originally had in the market. So without further ado, I guess let's get started.
All right. Thank you, Spencer.
So my first question is, before Spikeball worked, what ideas were you seriously believed that failed, and what did they teach you about your own judgment?
What ideas failed before Spikeball? Good question. So I'm not a serial entrepreneur. I'm not an inventor. I didn't even invent Spikeball, right? I brought it back to life. So um, I had long wanted to be an entrepreneur, but never really had an idea. Didn't have the skill set to create stuff. In high school, I'd custom make T-shirts and sell those. I was mowing lawns and kind of, you know, to show my age, I had a paper route. That was my main source of income in grade school. Um, but I guess as far as failed businesses prior to Spikeball, none, because I didn't really start any. I dabbled with stuff like T-shirts. I studied photography in college, so um, I guess that could be one failure. So I got a degree in photojournalism, wanted to become a photographer, and was not able to find full-time employment. I was able to get some um, occasional gigs here and there, but nothing to pay the bills. So um, yeah, I don't know. That was the dream, and that dream never happened. Kind of odd that I've got a degree in photojournalism, and I'm in the work that I'm in now. I'm glad it went the way I did, but it sure as heck was not part of the plan.
So kind of what I'm hearing is that there wasn't any product or anything before Spikeball that either seemed to interest you or to take traction that was like a dominant force before Spikeball, if you will.
No, for your listeners that don't know the story, so yeah, Spikeball originally came out in 1989. I was 14 years old at the time, and a friend bought it at a toy store, and that's how I heard about it. And from what little I know, they launched it in 1989, and it was killed, I think, in 91 or 92. So it was only around for like 2 or 3 years. And then fast forward, 17 years later or something like that, and me and my friends decided to see if we could bring it back to life. So, I can't think of any right now, but I know I have ideas fairly often about whether I'm driving down the road or standing in a coffee shop, or like, oh, this would be a cool thing to do. And I know we all have those sort of ideas. But I think what makes entrepreneurs a little different is we actually take steps to actually explore those. So, and that's what we did with Spikeball. But yeah, no previous product experience, I should say, prior to Spikeball.
Now, was there what early traction moment felt like proof but later turned out to be misleading?
Can you say it again?
What early traction moment felt like it was proof but later turned out that it wasn't, and the fact that it was misleading, if you will?
Hmm. Our first month of sales, so if I remember right, that was June of 2008. I think we did about $4,000 in revenue. And I had no idea if that was good or bad because, we had literally never sold this thing before. But I was like, hey, it's 4,000 more than we had the previous month. So that's great. Um, and in July, I forget what sales were, but they were nowhere close to 4,000. Let's say it's maybe around $500 or something like that. And I realized that, I guess once we had that first month of June, I figured, oh, we'll build momentum. And July will be maybe 5,000, and the next month will be six. And June was what I lovingly call pity sales. So when I went on the back end to see, back then, the only place you could buy Spikeball was spikeball.com. So I could see literally every customer's name, where they lived, etc. A lot of the customers had the last name of Reuter. So they were family members that just were nice enough to support me. They had no real interest in Spikeball. A lot of them were childhood friends, high school, college friends, professional friends, etc. So I appreciate their sales, and that gave us a good month one, but month two dropped like a ton. But in month two, I did start noticing, like, wait, I have no idea who these people are. This is like, that's sustainable. We finished the first year, I think it was $10,850 or something like that in revenue. But the fact that I saw strangers from San Francisco ordering, from Iowa, from Florida, and I'm like, oh wait, word is spreading here. So, but yeah, that first month was a bit misleading.
Now I have two either questions or points. And so the one is, what did you observe from, you mentioned 1981 when Spikeball first got introduced to the market, but then like 9 or 10 years later it got killed. What did you notice that either the founder or that the toy company didn't fully take advantage of that allowed for the product to sustain and to blow up into the mass market? And then the second question or point is that you mentioned not knowing the people who were buying the products, but saying that it gained traction. How did that, was that kind of proof and this is actually working out because it's a lot larger than just the people that I know. And so this is actually it's able to get traction and it's able to blow up because random people that I don't know are able to go out and buy my product and I don't know you, but you're able to take an interest in what I'm producing, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. So first one, just to clarify, it launched in 1989 and it was around until like 1992 or so. And your question basically was, what do we do different, or why do I think it worked the second time around and it didn't work the first time? One thing the original team didn't have that we did is this thing called the internet. So we had a massive advantage, back then. I can't speak from experience because I was 14 years old. I didn't really know how products got launched back then. But if I had to guess, the traditional way of launching a product back then was here's exactly what Spikeball did. There was a design firm in Chicago that was full of inventors, and they invented the game. They then called a bunch of really big toy companies like Mattel and Hasbro and Tomy, and they licensed the design, the game, to Tomy, which is this massive Japanese toy company. It's still around today. And if I had to guess, Tomy then called up Toys R Us and Dick's Sporting Goods and Academy and all the other ones and got the product on the store shelf. And I'm assuming, again, this is an assumption, I'm assuming it did not sell well. And I'm assuming it didn't sell well because people would walk by, they'd see this weird looking trampoline thing in this box on a shelf, and they wouldn't know what it was, so they'd probably just keep walking. And, we got lucky. So when I launched in 2008, there was no store shelf that we were on. It was only spikeball.com. And in spikeball.com, obviously, we can put videos. We can put tutorials. We can teach people what this thing is. We can email just a simple link to a friend saying, hey, please tell all your friends about this. So I think Tomy, like all other companies back then, I assume you were kind of a slave to the store shelf. And if it didn't work, that's kind of hard. Now, from what I understand, I think I did hear that they like back then MTV was really big. And it was called MTV Spring Break. That was like a really big thing every spring break where they'd send a camera crew down to like Panama City Beach or to Daytona or something. And I think I heard that Tommy did a deal with MTV to try and launch Spikeball on that. I heard the weather wasn't that great, so not, people didn't, I think it was raining or something or whatever. But I think they did try to get out and build the brand a bit, but way more expensive, way more difficult back then. Where you compare to having the internet, my God, is that a massive difference? And the other thing, and this wasn't because we were so smart, it was, I think we just kind of got lucky by launching on spikeball.com. I could see every customer's name and their email address. And I emailed nearly every single one of those customers saying, hey, Spencer, thanks for buying the set. I'm actually going to drive to the post office tonight. Your Spikeball set should arrive in a couple days. By the way, I see you live in Annapolis. What a cool town. If you don't mind me asking, how'd you hear about Spikeball? That was essentially the formula that probably 99% of our customers got during those first 5 years. And I was asking that question, which in hindsight, pat myself on the back, turned out to be amazing because I got so much insight from that. But I was asking the question just because I was curious. The main driver was, how in the heck did somebody from Annapolis, I live in Chicago, how'd they hear about this thing? So once I started and I'd ask how'd you hear about this question? I'd hear from people say, oh, I'm in Young Life. And a friend of mine brought it to a Young Life meeting last week. And I heard from tons of like faith-based youth groups like that. I heard from people that played Ultimate or Ultimate Frisbee. Oh, I was at an Ultimate tournament and I saw it. And that allowed me to really refine our marketing. And back then, most of the marketing was essentially me shipping out free sets. So and this kind of bleeds into the second part of your question, like, okay, when that stranger does buy in Annapolis or San Francisco or anywhere, why did I believe that was leading to momentum, building momentum? We're blessed in our product in that one person buys it, they now have to go find three friends to actually use it. So there's a viral element built in to our product, similar to these kind of headphones, the headphones I've got in right now. It's a very unique design. When Apple first came out with headphones, they were the wired headphones, but they were white. In the history of planet Earth, white headphones never came out. It was like this weird, super innovative, but they didn't need an Apple logo at all. You just knew when you saw the white that was Apple, and just a real small thing, but brilliant on their part. So black and yellow is our color, but that's not what, it does help identify. But anyway, every time we sell a set, and, we'll sell hundreds today alone all over the world, if not thousands. Let's say we sell 1,000 sets today. That means 4,000 people will actually play with it. And of those 3,000 that didn't actually buy the set, a decent amount of them are going to have enough fun where when they go home, they're probably going to be like, I've got a trip coming up soon. I'd love to have a Spikeball set with me. Or my buddy's birthday's coming up. Maybe I'll buy her a Spikeball set. So there's this nice viral element. If I was selling plastic cups, it's kind of hard for somebody to look at this plastic cup and then be inspired and for this cup to go viral because you don't know who makes it. You don't know where you got it. And, so we are, lucky, I think is the word, that the product does market itself so well.
Now, was there kind of like a reason why the product initially didn't get either put in a Kmart or a Walmart, which was like, well known, but the fact that getting put in a big retailer would have helped, traction and drive a lot of volume. And then another question that I have is what happens if, because I'm sure you've probably faced this at some point, what happens if people get bored of the product and they say, okay, I've played with it for maybe 3 or 6 months and now I'm bored and I want to move on. Like how do you keep the customer wanting to rely and go back to your product so that there's that excitement, but also so that they're not going, yeah, I kind of got bored of the product and I don't want to, either not, it's not a matter of not wanting to buy from the company, but how do you keep it alive and so that people want to come back and so that there's that referral for,
Yep.
the excitement for the product, so to speak.
Yeah. The first question on, essentially why didn't we go into retail earlier? I didn't think any retailers would say yes. So I didn't even bother calling them because let's keep in mind, I've got a degree in photojournalism. So it's not like I studied marketing or product development or knew anything about retail. Um, I didn't even bother wasting my time. So I'm like, there's no way. Like, I'm going to call. I don't even know how to do pricing. I don't know who. I didn't know who would pay for shipping. How do we actually get the units to the stores? I had no idea. Um, that was part of it. And the other part, one of our values at Spikeball is to challenge the status quo. I love the photo behind you of San Francisco. I lived there from 1998 to 2002. It is an absolute hotbed of innovation. And I believe people that wake up every day kind of wanting to challenge the status quo. So when I was there, that was during the first internet boom. And I, since then, have still loved lots, anything technology, internet related. So the fact that I could pay somebody to build a store on spikeball.com and kind of challenge the status quo, which was, status quo was, and still to some point is going into retail. That sounded kind of cool and innovative. And so that was part of also what was driving the spikeball.com only strategy early on. But as we were in business a couple of years, we started getting notes from retailers asking us if they could carry our product. Most of them were like small mom and pop sporting goods stores or toy stores. Um, and one reached out, which is Darien Sports Shop in Darien, Connecticut, and that's actually where my wife is from. And I'd been to that store, and that was the first store that I actually like knew of. So I replied to the woman saying, "Hey, thanks so much for reaching out. We actually don't sell to retail, but I've been thinking about it. How about this? I'm happy to sell to you, but can you teach me how it works?" And she said, sure. And that's how I learned how to do pricing and so we slowly started adding more retailers. And then I do remember I was going on a trip to Denver, and back then that's where Sports Authority was headquartered. And Sports Authority used to be the number two sporting goods chain just behind Dick's Sporting Goods. Um, and I went there and got a meeting and showed him everything. And the guy was kind of like, And he gave me terrible terms. Like they wouldn't they wouldn't buy anything up front. Like the way retail normally works is, let's say with Dick's Sporting Goods, they say, we think we need 5,000 sets or however many sets. They will then order them. They'll send you a purchase order. And then maybe 60 to 90 days later, they'll actually pay for them. But Sports Authority wanted to do, I think they called it pay by scan, which meant they would only pay us as each unit sold in the store. That's a very risky, very expensive, and the amount they were going to pay us was next to nothing. And they eventually shot me down. And I was really bummed about that. But in hindsight, man, did we get lucky, because one, the terms were terrible. And a couple of years after they shot me down, they went out of business for good. So the unfortunate thing that happens when a big retailer like that goes out of business, let's say you have, I don't know, 10,000 units sitting on their shelves that they haven't paid for yet, they don't pay for them ever. You're just stuck. And that's happened a few times to us, and that is incredibly painful. So that's the retail question. What was the second part of your question? I forgot. Sorry.
Um, How do you keep the product interesting in terms of
Oh, right. Yeah.
freshness?
So if somebody buys it and are they bored of it after 3 to 6 months? So yeah, that'll definitely happen with some people. That'll happen with any product, right? But we, in our marketing, we've got a pretty active social media feed on all channels. So we try to entertain people, and there's a Instagram account that popped up recently. I think they call it. We don't run it. It's a random person, but I think it's called Spiking Anywhere, and they're like climbing to the top of mountains. They're going to beaches, all these beautiful places. And while it's a small account, I of course hope it will be big someday. I think stuff like that inspires people like, oh, I never would have thought to bring my spike ball set to the beach. I normally play in the backyard or on a college campus. At College of Charleston, right there, the club has started there recently, and there's college clubs all over the country. Some people have fun playing on a casual basis, whereas others are super competitive. And in a few weeks, I'm heading down to Orlando. There's going to be a tournament with, I don't know, 600 players or something like that are traveling in from all over the U.S. There'll be some from Canada, and as long as I think we can keep sharing people's stories, that's going to keep people coming in. The good news is the world makes a new batch of 14-year-olds every year. So if the world stops having new 14-year-olds, then we might be in some trouble. But from what I understand, people are still having kids, and it's similar to like basketball, right? I get the question a lot, like, oh, when do you think you will have saturated the marketplace? And once everybody's bought one, then Spikeball's kind of done, right? And I'm like, basketball's been around 100 years. Soccer's been around probably just as long, if not longer. And those are, of course, massive industries. And I don't know how many millions of basketballs are sold every year, but the machine keeps turning. So saturation is not a worry of mine. I just want to make sure that we are always out there trying to engage with new customers. And the mission of the company is to bring people together. And as long as we keep focusing on that, I think we'll be in decent shape.
Now, what did Shark Tank fix that, or what did Shark Tank not fix that people assumed about it? I know that when you went on Shark Tank, there was the initial deal, but what besides from the deal, what was it? What did people assume or not assume about it, so to speak?
Everybody assumed that the deal happened, which it actually didn't. So about half of the deals that you see on Shark Tank that you see happen, where the entrepreneur hugs it out or shakes hand with, only about half of those deals actually happen. Because what happens on the show is a handshake. Neither side is legally bound to do the deal. Now, I do believe that I and Damon John both had, when we shook hands and said, let's do this, we both had every intention of closing the deal. But I spoke with him a few weeks, maybe a month after we filmed, and learned that his main interest was in licensing. So he was like, yeah, Chris, I got friends at Marvel Comics, let's make a Spider-Man branded Spikeball set. And I'm like, I kind of want to make it feels like we're treating it like a toy. I want to build our own brand. And he had a few other licensing deals, and just the alignment wasn't there. So kind of like some relationships happen, you never officially break up, you just kind of stop calling each other. That's kind of what happened with us. And I when I did shake his hand and say, yeah, let's do this, I was hoping I was going to get to tap into the brain of the guy that built what was once a massive brand. Fubu back in the day was a really big deal, and I was hoping he could coach me on building the brand side of Spikeball, and that wasn't his interest. So I wouldn't say either side is right or wrong, just our general interest and approach, they weren't really aligned. So yeah, so the good news is, the bad news is we didn't get any money, we didn't get a nickel. But the good news is I got to keep equity. I didn't give up any stock, and got to continue building the way we wanted to build. That was a long time ago that we were on, but we still get reruns, which is great. But actually, the best part, journalists love asking Mark Cuban, what is the one deal that got away that you regret not doing? And every single time he says Spikeball, and that feels pretty good.
Is it that, and is it also Ring as well? unless I'm mistaken, or maybe not.
All the journalists think it's Ring, but I forget what his reasoning is. But he disagrees with them every time. He's like, "Nope, that's not." He goes, "Even though Ring was, $1 billion company or whatever, Spikeball's a fraction of the size of Ring." He still stands by and says, because I think it genuinely bothers him. He's said a few times when he goes to a park or to a beach, he's like, "Spikeball's everywhere. I'm reminded all the time that I made this mistake," and I kind of like that.
Now, was there like some like standing your ground, so to speak, when you were getting grilled, in a matter of feeling nervous when when the doors open and you and your um co-creator, whoever it
Mm-hmm.
is there or with you, did you feel nervous, or is it a matter of being like, we own this, this is our company, we're here to seek 20% of our company, and we're gonna listen to whatever and make the best call and
Yeah,
best decision
there's
possible?
essentially two parts, when you're filming and that you see on the show. The first part is, yeah, when the entrepreneur goes through the door, they stand there and then they give their, memorized speech. That's part one. Part two is the Q&A, where, you don't know where it's going to go. I was terrified of part one. And part two, I was incredibly confident. So I have never been good at memorizing anything. I can give a great speech. I have no problem standing in front of large audiences, talking and delivering a message. But if it has to be word for word and kind of following a script, I kind of freeze up, and that's what's required of that first part. So I can't tell you how many times I rehearsed in the mirror in the months leading up to filming. Um, Literally the night before. So we filmed, if I remember right, I think it's Sony Picture Studios in Culver City, just outside LA. We stayed in some hotel a couple miles down the road. And in that hotel, there's a big parking lot. Next to the parking lot, in the sort of like grass, dirt area, there are these big rocks that are about the size of like a human head. And it was me and four other guys. I was the only one that was going to be talking. They were going to be the four that would demonstrate a point. They'd actually play the product. But it was like 11 o'clock the night before we film, and the five of us are out in this empty parking lot. I pretended that each of those rocks were the five sharks, and we practiced our entrance walk. So, went walking through the door, and I was in front, and then there were two behind me, and then two people behind them. And I'm literally singing the song. Dun, 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 dun. Oh, wait, no, guys, start over. Everybody needs to start with their left foot. And three, two, one, right? Just that sort of level of detail practicing. So we need everything to be perfectly choreographed. And so then we'd walk up, and then I would stare at that center rock, and I would say, "Thanks, hi Sharks, thanks for having me. My name is Chris Reuter. My company is Spikeball, and today I'm looking for," and blah blah blah. When I would drive to and from work every day, leading up to that, I recorded it on my phone, and that's what I would listen to. I just beat it in my head so many times, and I actually did mess up the delivery. And by the way, there's no retakes. So if you completely screw up, the cameras keep rolling. There's like, if you want to watch some funny videos, like go to YouTube and type up like, Shark Tank mistake or something like that. And there's a lot of people that just like freeze, and I feel really bad for them. But that sort of stuff is really good for viewership. But I messed up, but thankfully the editors were kind and they kind of chopped it up to where you couldn't really tell. So once I finished that and we got to the Q&A part, then I was able to relax because I knew we had a solid business. I knew my numbers. I knew, like, I was like, you know what, even if this goes terrible, I've still got a great business. So there's my answer.
Now, my last big question before I boil it down, because I just saw that we're running out of time, is when you got featured on How I Built This, did anything internally change, or was that mostly external validation?
I mean, it was massive external. I mean, of course, it was such an honor for when they reached out and said, "Hey, we'd love to do a story on you guys." Um, I was really struggling at that time personally, and the business was really struggling when we recorded that. So that was a hard, we had a really strong incline of business during COVID, and then things have gone down a bit since then. We're back to growing now, things are good. But when we filmed that, I was kind of glad that he didn't really ask any questions about how business currently was. It was all tell the story, how did it get founded, and all that. So um, yeah, I mean, again, it was just such an honor to be on it. And I got so many notes from friends all over the world. All my close friends knew about it when it first came out, but in like the years following, I'll still occasionally get a text or an email from a friend I haven't talked to in 15 years and be like, no way, you're on How I Built This. And so it's been a really cool experience. But it wasn't like, when it came out, we saw sales skyrocket. Like we didn't even see a tiny bump in sales. But I think it's great for the brand, obviously, if people know that Spikeball's been on How I Built This, like, okay, it's a legitimate platform to be on. And if How I Built This thinks the Spikeball story is interesting, then most people probably will too.
So how do you view both being on Shark Tank, but how I built this? Do you see it as kind of wanting to take a calculated risk and saying, we want to hear your story, but we also want to help you and blow up your audience and the like having the exposure for people to know who you are, but also to help, whether it's people knowing who you are or helping to expand the company and the scope, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean the exposure is incredible, and we don't really pay for exposure, so it's interesting. After you're on those shows, you of course get bombarded by people saying, "Hey, if you pay me X amount of dollars, I'll get you on this show, or we'll do whatever." And that sort of stuff comes across as inauthentic. People know when you've sort of paid for placement and that sort of stuff. So we've never done that. But yeah, I mean, it's just a great external validator. And people know, like when you see something on Shark Tank or on How I Built This, that, okay, this is legit. This isn't like a scam. It's hopefully a company that's going to be around for a while. So yeah, I mean, those are both their shows, of course, but they're both massive brands in and of themselves. And to even have the name Spikeball be mentioned in the same sentence as those brands that's great company to keep. So yeah, and it's funny, like again, Shark Tank was a while ago, but a lot of people still like, wait, is that the thing I saw on Shark Tank? And maybe they saw it 6 years ago on Shark Tank, or maybe they saw it 2 weeks ago on a rerun, but you can't really tell how old it is when you watch it. So it's pretty cool thing.
Now, was there anything that surprised you about either that you, looking from the outside, didn't fully think or say, well, this might change how I view it, and then after the fact of like being on it and getting asked the questions and actually thinking through, well, this actually shifted how I think about, whatever it might be.
Um, Shark Tank? I don't think so. I mean, it was almost all good. Like sharks were super cool, even the ones I didn't do the deal with, and the producers were great to work with. Um, on How I Built This, there was one thing that kind of rubbed me the wrong way. Just before we hit the record button to do the interview, the interviewer said, "Hey, by the way, I interviewed the guy that invented Spikeball, and we're going to be talking about that." And Jeff is his name. We've swapped notes a few times, but in general, I get the feeling he's not all that happy with me. I did reach out to him before we started the company. I feel that I did the right thing, gave him every opportunity to join us, and he has his own take on that. And I felt that springing it on me right before we hit the record button, I didn't feel that that was all that cool, but so goes life. I thought the overall episode was great and loved the conversation.
Now, my next question is, what's one thing you want to do in 2026 that you didn't do in 2025, and what's been getting in the way of that?
I want to focus more on storytelling and community building. So We are interviewing for a community manager role right now. We'll hopefully be hiring that role soon. That'll bring us closer to the community as a whole. So that will be great. And then the Spikeball app, it's still in sort of a private beta right now, but we'll be doing a pretty big launch on that, and that will allow local players. So let's say you live in Annapolis and somebody else does, but you don't know them. You both have the Spikeball app, but you don't know each other. And let's say you go to the app, you can post a pickup game, and it says, "Hey, I'm playing at I don't know, Smith Park Tuesday at 6 o'clock," and you hit publish. The other person's phone will buzz and say, "Oh, local pickup game is happening. Do you want to join?" And that'll be happening all over the world. So we're still working out a few of the kinks right now. It is live in the App Store. It is live in Android. You do need a code to actually create an account. Happy to get you a code here. But very excited to get that in the marketplace. And then lastly, Spike Pong. I'll show you what that is. It's a small tabletop set. Comes in a very small box. And it's one you play sitting down with. Comes with a bunch of balls, kind of like ping pong style balls, and comes with this mini net. And we ordered 7,000 of those last fall, like in November, thinking it was going to take 6 or 7 months to sell all of them, and we sold out in a matter of weeks. So we'll have more inventory this spring, maybe February/March. But it's Spikeball's sort of first real attempt at going indoors and becoming a part of family game night and other stuff like that. So I'm very excited to grow the brand in a wildly new place, and it's $34.99, so it's a much lower price point, which should make people engaging with us and entering sort of the Spikeball world a lot easier. So excited about those.
I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm gonna bundle my two questions into one. So if you could ask the next guest one question, not knowing who it would be, what would the question be, and then who are 2 to 3 operators that would make great guests for the podcast?
Oh, geez. Next guest is okay. So there'll be an entrepreneur of some sort. Why did they start the business? What do they personally get out of it? That would be, some people build a company solely to make money and sell it. Others, it's something that they genuinely love doing and they hope to do it for the rest of their lives. And I'm always curious, sort of, what are the motivators? Who are operators that I think should be on? Good question. Cody Plofker of Jones Road, the beauty brand. Massive compared to Spikeball. Sean Frank runs Ridge Wallet. He's a great operator. Some other guys that I follow on Twitter. But yeah, I don't know. I like companies that make a physical product because that I can relate to that. I love talking to software people, but their businesses are wildly different than mine.
All right, Chris, thank you for the conversation. I know that I learned a lot, especially from obviously connecting in person. That was good, but also taking a deeper dive. This has been episode number 28 of the Young Entrepreneurs Podcast, and you can hit the subscribe button and don't forget to leave us a comment. And until next time, we'll see you.